I think he ran like 100. Yeah.
Y el autobús que me dejaron en el parqueo ahí en Nürburgring, manejarlo para la casa. Yeah, we were right.
No, this is the fried chicken.
No?